Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Broku, and this is a bit late. I'm a bit late to this video, but I wanted to make a video on the amazing episode that was Black Clover, episode 151, and that was essentially the Black Clover Captain's Battle Royale. Well, I guess it wasn't really a Battle Royale, but it almost felt like it, because it was 2 teams of 4, and they were fighting into and it was this kind of the same thing with the tournament, where you were protecting your crystal from being destroyed, and it was phenomenal. I think it would definitely go down as, at the very least, a top 3 episode for me in the series, and might even be the best episode. It's definitely the best fighting episode. The only other episodes that I think would be better would be the one that's more plot or story driven rather than fight driven. But it was phenomenal, and one of the things I really do like about it is that, you know, in the entirety of the Black Clover series, when it comes to power scaling, there's been so much weird discussions coming from scaling the captains, because there was not nearly enough feats from all of them. Like, for example, Kaiser, the only feats we really saw from him were in his elven form, and you know, Charlotte didn't have too many feats, and her greatest feats were in her elven form as well. So now we get to see this battle, and what it really does is it doesn't necessarily equate all of the captains, but what it does, it takes the 8 captains that were featured in this battle and puts them all at a somewhat relative level to each other. And I really do like that, because I honestly I wanted that to be the preferred narrative for me. I wanted to be that maybe there was a strongest captain, which I still believe it's Yami, and I believe this episode shows that, but either way, all the captains are close together anyways in terms of power. They just maybe provide different aspects to a battle or to the army as a whole that make them unique to the system. But overall, I thought this was a great episode. I love all the fights. I love seeing all the captains fight. Some captains fight together, like Jack and Yami fighting together. I like that, as well as Nozel and Kaiser teaming up. But then I also like the other side teaming up as well. One of the things that I didn't really like is that Rill was not featured in this battle. He essentially had to sit back and not join, which I don't know why. Rill is a captain. Don't know why he wouldn't be featured in this battle. He is a captain, even though this kind of does put him as the weakest captain now. I think this is just Tabata showing us that he's probably the weakest, and that's why he was not featured in the battle. But I think they should have found a way to maybe expand on the battle a bit so that Rill could have been featured, because I think his paint magic would have been really cool to see in this battle, with all the stuff he could have drawn, his imagination going wild. I really would have liked to see Rill, but it does make sense. Rill is the weakest captain. I mean, this has kind of been a thing for a while, that he was probably either the weakest or one of the weakest captains, but it makes sense. I mean, he's the youngest, and while his magic type is really cool and could be overpowered once he fully masters potential, right now, it does kind of make sense that he is on the, well, at the very least, the lower tier of all the captains. One of the, I guess, cool things, and this does show that William is also pretty competent, because before, I guess, him being able to fight Zenon, and even before that, he didn't have a lot of great feats when it comes to fighting. He was able to take on the Diamond Generals, but that was after sapping an entire battlefield's worth of mana. But overall, he didn't really have many great feats. He was also one of the lesser captains when it came to one-on-one power scaling ability. But I like this fight because it showed him how good he is in an overall battle, which is kind of what his type is. He is a support mage, but it's also good at fighting. But he was really cool to see in this battle, and that it was also that he was pretty competent. This shows that he's pretty strong as well. His tree spell was in the very beginning really powerful, and he was, in terms of speed too, was pretty fast. And so I like that this, like I said, it doesn't equate to the captains together, but what it does is it puts them all on at least a relative playing field, where a captain should be able to fight another captain and at least hold their own for a bit, but ultimately one can defeat the other. But one thing I noticed is that, you know, Jack is still pretty strong as well, because they made sure to show that William is he's a strong captain. But in the very beginning, you know, William activates that tree spell, and Jack is able to cut a huge chunk of the tree off. And this is Jack where none of his slashes have adapted yet, which means that he's not near his potential, and he's able to cut that off. We also see Fugolion facing off against Nozel and Kaiser. We get to see Fugolion being amped by William and Charlotte, and his salamander grows huge. And we also get to see a feat that is essentially mentioned in the guidebook. And now, it's not necessarily the same, but this is a massive lake that they're fighting over. And the Fire Spirit Salamander, pretty much without difficulty, vaporizes all the water. It just completely vaporizes it and completely drowns out this massive lake. Now, this is a huge lake. I will show a couple panels that shows how big it is. It's massive. It is absolutely huge. This is a big lake. When it comes to actually calculations, don't really know, but I've talked about before when it comes to power scaling. The Fire Spirit Salamander in the guidebook was stated to be able to vaporize a sea. The calculation used was a sea at the size of the smallest sea in the world. I don't know how that would compare to a big lake like this, but I'm not really into power scaling, hugely as much as I was, and I'm definitely really not into calculations anymore. I'm going more so for narrative now. That is really what interests me, power scaling. Basically, what happens to me is it goes through phases. There's phases where I really like power scaling, then after I do it for a bit, it's like, this is too much for me. I'm going to go back to just caring about the narrative and making theories and stuff. But that is something that the guidebook does kind of play into. Maybe this is the kind of a thing that Tabata is calling back to, because this is exactly what happens. I guess it's not exactly what happens, because the salamander did not use its talons. This is just its heat that it was giving off was able to vaporize a sea and vaporize a lake in this scenario. But overall, really cool. But yeah, like I said, it does kind of show that Yami is still the strongest captain. Yami fights 16 clones of himself, and while he's falling asleep, he essentially is holding his own. So he's fighting 16 versions of himself while holding his own, and then he does his Dimension Slash. Not only does he use it to escape from the world, but he literally shatters Dorothy's realm, which is a infinite-sized dimension. So is this a infinite 3D or a universal feat for Yami here? Because her realm is endless. It's stated multiple times, and Yami just destroyed it with Dimension Slash. And not only did he just destroy it, it broke through both the crystals that both teams had. So this match did ultimately end up in a tie, which I did like, because it still overall leaves it, I guess, a bit ambiguous that who is the better team, and it technically is a tie because both crystals were destroyed, and that was the objective. So when it comes to this objective, both teams are essentially equal. But yeah, this also shows another thing that I've talked about so many times, and I don't know why people will still argue that it never was a thing, unless specifically stated. And basically, people would always say that captains at the beginning of the series, up until the point of the Elf arc, they are the same power and stuff like that. And I would always say, no, they're getting stronger. I think I made a video on it, and then if not, it showed up multiple times. There were like a panel where all the Magic Knights get together and say they're going to train to get stronger. Yami always talking about surpassing his limits. Yami just straight up displaying stronger feats over the course of the series. But this for sure shows it, because, like I said, there was at one point where Yami is fighting 16 clones of himself at once while falling asleep. So he's fighting 16 clones of himself while being nerfed, and then Yami says that these are versions of Dorothy that versions of Yami that Dorothy had seen. She had not seen Yami currently, so this means that Yami is way stronger than the past self that Dorothy has seen, because he's fighting 16 of them at once while being nerfed because he's losing sleep. So this does show that not only just Yami, but all the captains get stronger over the course of the series. It's just natural. I mean, they're all training to get through a higher goal together and become successful. But yeah, loved all the fights. I just wish that Brill was present. I do think his magic is really cool, and I think he's a really cool character. It sucks that he was not here, but I think it might have been done just because this makes an equal number of teams. Although I think you could have still done a 4v5, just say that's the 4 best captains versus the 5 worst captains, and it's balanced because it's a 4v5, even though the top 4 are on the same team. So that's what I think could have been done, maybe, but it still, I guess, works out that this was a 4v4 because it works up mathematically. But overall, I love this episode. It's actually on the point where it makes me want to go watch the anime, because I have not been watching it for a while. I just kind of lost interest with the whole, the huge inconsistencies and errors with Leopold and Noelle both using runes and arrays in the filler before even learning how to use them. So that kind of made me lose interest. But now, after seeing this episode, seeing how good it was, and then hearing how good the Devil Banisher arc was, I believe it's called, I'm actually going to go back and watch that. I think I'm going to do maybe a video on the Devil Banisher arc, because it does, from the screenshots and tweets I've seen, it does sound and look really cool. And so I'm going to go back and watch that, hopefully over the next few days, and I might do a video on that, maybe give my review and talk about what, lore and stuff and what this adds to the series. But overall, this was great. Maybe at some point I'll rewatch this again and I'll give my analysis on the, I guess, top 8. Or I could do top 9 captains in this battle, in this episode. Just put Rill at 9th because he wasn't even there, and kind of make it so it's that. But then again, it also is still hard because this is teams of 4, whereas when you're generally doing a ranking tier list, it's one-on-one fights, who's the strongest, and this was a 4v4, so it'd be hard to scale. But overall, I would say Yami is the strongest. But this overall did make all the captains, I guess, a lot more relative to each other than a lot of people think. But overall, that's kind of my thoughts on the episode. That was really good. If you're not really watching the anime right now, you definitely should go watch this one. I'm mainly a manga viewer. I used to watch the anime all the time, but once this went to the filler, and then, like I said, once the Leopold and Noelle errors happened, I just lost all interest because I'm like, is this really canon? If not, is there really a point to watch it? But if they did fix their errors and kind of get back on track to what canon should be, and if this happens, it's one of the best episodes in all Black Clover, and then you have the Devil Banishers arc, I believe what it's called, like I said, and I heard that's really good, so I'm going to get back and watch that. I believe it's a 6 to 7 episode arc, but I'll give you guys my thoughts on that arc later, maybe next week, hopefully. But hope you guys all have an amazing day. Peace out.